it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for another PB&J card class. And today I will be doing one of my favorite techniques, the Emboss Resist technique, to create a hello card with a heart. And here's a look at the card that we'll be making today. And I'm using our new transparent set called Love and Hugs, and also Love Chapter and the creative die called Hello Frame. So to begin, here's a look at that transparent set, Love and Hugs. And I just love this big heart with the beautiful flourish around it. So I'm just putting that onto my acrylic block. And I have some Nina Solar White cardstock. And I'm using this cardstock because it's a nice, smooth cardstock and work great for applying the inks. And I'm rubbing that with an anti-static bag because I'm going to be doing some embossing. And that'll just keep the embossing powder where I want it and not sticking in any other places. So to stamp, I'm going to use Versamark ink. So I'll just ink up my stamp here. And I want to make sure I completely cover all of those flourishes and tiny hearts around the outer part of that stamp. And I'm first going to stamp it onto the panel. And this is the panel that's going onto the actual card. And I'll make sure to apply even pressure. I'm kind of pressing with the heel of my hand and moving my hand over the stamp to make sure that it completely stamps. And then I'll sprinkle this with white embossing powder. You can kind of see that there. It'll show up definitely when we start applying all of the ink. And I was just checking to make sure that I had completely covered it. Then onto a scratch piece of the Nina Solar White cardstock. I'm going to stamp this again. And all I really need is the heart portion of this stamp. So I don't need the entire image. And then I'll also sprinkle that with white embossing powder. And then off camera, I just applied heat to set that. Now I'm going to use Distress Inks with my Papericious ink blending tool with a foam pad. And I'm starting with Picked Raspberry. And I'm just applying that in a circular motion and moving up to the stamped heart. And now you can start to see that image showing up. I'm not worried about what the inside of that large heart looks like because we'll be covering that up with the other heart that we stamped. So right now I'm just worried about the background. And I'm going to keep applying the Distress ink. And I like to start with a light layer and then add to it, making it darker. And this way I don't have to add too much pressure, I just add several layers, and that keeps the background nice and smooth and even. I'll just turn my cardstock as I go. Now I'm going to add seedless preserves. I'm starting on the inside of that heart and then working my way out. And again, the inside of that heart isn't going to show, but I wanted a darker shadow right up close to the edge of the heart and around those flourishes. So by starting on the inside portion that doesn't show, then I don't have any uneven marks that show on the outer portion once we put the card together. I hope that makes sense. And again, I start light and I just keep applying more layers until I'm happy with the intensity of color. And then I wanted to tone down the background just a little bit, so I'm putting some fired brick on top of that Picked Raspberry color. And I like how just the little variation in color helps give that some dimension. Now this is that second heart that we stamped and embossed, and now I'm adding Wild Honey Distress ink to that one. And we'll be cutting out that heart, so it doesn't matter what the outer portion of the heart looks like now. And then this is Rusty Hinge, and I'm applying that just around the outer edge to give a shadow to the outside edge of the heart that we'll be cutting out. So it just barely goes into the actual heart, but just enough to give some extra dimension. I think this adds to the roundness of the heart. And then once I'm done inking that, I will just go ahead and fussy cut that out. And it's actually really easy to cut out because it's just the heart that gets cut. Now I'm going to work a little bit more on my background. I decided I wanted it to have a little bit more going on. So this is the script from the Penny Black stamp called Love Chapter. And I'm inking that with Fired Brick Distress ink. And I was purposely not careful to apply the ink to the stamp because I want some areas to stamp darker and some lighter and some without any text at all. So it's just very lightly in the background. Another way you can do that is just put the ink on the whole stamp and then remove some of it with a baby wipe before you stamp. But because I had the little mini distress ink pad, it was easy to just randomly apply it to the stamp. And I'm working my way up the background and mostly over on the right hand side as I move upwards. And there's a look at how that looks with the heart added on. So to remove any excess ink from the stamping or the ink blending tool, I'm just using a baby wipe that isn't too damp, that's fairly dry, just to buff over the embossed areas. And then I'm going to apply that heart that we cut out, and I'm doing that with dimensional adhesive. So I'm just sticking those down, peeling off the backing, and then I'll stick down that heart. And then also using a baby wipe on the outer edges of that heart. Now I love this little scallop that's part of the Friends frame where I got the sentiment, or the Hello frame, sorry. And I'm just adding that along that left-hand side. And then to apply the sentiment, I'm using a Zig glue pen. And I cut the sentiment and that frame, that scallop, from watercolor paper, just so it's a little bit thicker and it's easier to work with and adhere, and it just adds a little more dimension to that sentiment when it's applied to the card. To finish off the card, I just wrapped it with some twine, adhered it to the note card, and added a few self-adhesive pearls. And just for fun, I did a second card using the exact same techniques and layout, but a different color scheme. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and give it a thumbs up. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter, and on our website listed there, and I'll have links in the description box below. And here's a complete list of all the supplies used on today's card.